When it comes to Honda cars, the City has been pretty much synonymous with the company ever since they first launched it over 20 years ago. In fact, it's been such a success that they've already sold over 8 lakh units of the City, which for a premium sedan is a pretty big number. But I have a personal angle with the City. You see, back in 2003, just before they introduced the second generation of the car, I bought one of the last pieces of the VTEC of that era. It was an amazing car to drive. You know, I loved that 14-inch alloys, the twin tailpipes, the spoiler, the hollowed out headrests. All that for me almost 20 years ago was a big deal, and I had great fun with the car. So much so that in 5 years I drove it for 2 lakh kilometers. I still had vivid memories. But today we are here. This is the 5th generation of the City. It's a big car. In fact, in size, it's almost 4.6 meters long, which is as long as the last Civic. So that's a pretty large car, the largest in its segment. It comes with 2 engines, 1 automatic, 2 manual options, and we're going to drive it today to see whether Honda's one of the most important products in India has improved to justify the 5th generation. And if it has, then as an ex-City owner, what do I think of it as a driver's car and as a premium sedan? Now, if we look back at the history of the City, I had a bit of a problem between the designs of the 3rd generation and the 4th generation car. I think the design changes between the 3rd gen and the 4th gen were so evolutionary. I found it hard to differentiate between the two. Yes, if you look closely, there were enough clues, but they weren't a stark change. With the 5th generation though, that's a good difference, that it's a stark change in the design, and that's in a very pleasant way. One caveat though, while this is the 5th generation of the City, Honda confirms that this is based on an improved, updated platform of the 4th generation car. So it's not a brand new platform, but it's been worked on extensively to improve upon the areas that the engineers and the customers had demanded in the past. So that aside, there are some very nice styling details on the Honda that I like. This headlight, this is a LED headlight now, 9 LED array, and the way it's been designed, the way it looks like all of them are lit, even though in the low beam only 6 of them are used, it comes across as a very nice detail. When you view the new Honda City in the rear view mirror of a car in front, the LED daytime running light is also rather striking and very well done. The chrome treatment has been integrated much more nicely than it's been done on the Amaze, so I think that's a plus. And the nose in profile, especially if you view it, it has a bit of a shark head kind of a profile, and I think that looks quite nice. It's an interesting detail. Now the Honda City does offer 165 mm of ground clearance, which is very good for our country. But what that does is it makes the stock 16-inch tires, there's too much wheel gap, so I think 17 might have been better, but then the cost goes up, the tire width has to go up, so those are lots of factors. The side features a nice shoulder line design, which is very well integrated. You see it starts from the headlight, cuts across all the way through and ends at the tail light. So I think that's been quite well done, and it gives the profile a very unique identity. The windows are quite large, the windscreen especially is quite large, and I'll talk about visibility when I go out to drive the car. But one of my favorite parts of the new City are the tail lights. They're very well done. They're again LEDs. I love this black smoked red combination. It's well integrated. It's also wraparound. So it's a fairly large tail light, and I think that for me is one of the distinct touches of this car. Overall, I would think if I were to rate the City styling, I would give it somewhere between 3.5 to 4. Which means it's a pretty good design. Could it have been a few more changes? Yes, I would like bigger wheels, but overall I'm quite pleased with how the car looks. Now, as I said earlier, the 5th generation of the Honda City, it's a pretty large car. At just under 4.6 meters, you would expect a lot of interior room, and I don't think you would be disappointed. What I particularly also like are the seats. They've been improved upon, they have better foam quality, and you can tell when you sit in them, they're really comfortable. They have great under thigh support. The other thing I really like is the steering. It's got the correct size of sort of thickness to it. It's small, it's really nice to hold. In fact, the leather surface on top of it feels really nice. It has all the controls that you need, including cruise control, and it also controls the 7-inch display, which is right here in front of me. The instrument console now has a 7-inch display integrated into it, which means that your tachometer, your trip information, your range information, your fuel level, all that is digital and changes dynamically and is actually quite well designed. The speedometer, however, the needle still remains analog, so that's something nice to see. The start-stop button has also been placed quite well, and one thing I don't like in Honda's previous cars, and something that has unfortunately carried over, is the infotainment system. It functions fine, it has Android Auto, it has Apple CarPlay, but the positioning and the resolution of the screen leaves much to be desired. In direct sunlight, as I'm sitting now, the visibility is quite poor, and every time you have to start the car, you have to turn up the brightness and contrast of the screen to make it appear usable. The other thing, the camera displays, both for the side view cameras and for the rear view cameras, the resolution again disappoints. So that's something that Honda can certainly improve upon. One thing that doesn't need improving though is the air conditioning system. Even in the 40 degrees of heat that I'm sitting right now in the peak sun, it's working brilliantly. In fact, I have to sit at 24 degrees because that's how cold the cabin becomes if you take the temperature any lower. So I think that works really well. Also, they've worked specifically on the feel of the AC knob. It clicks in sort of half digit temperature increases and decreases, and that works really well. It feels really good to use. What the new City also has is a bunch of power outlets. It's got one in the front, two in the rear. You also get two USB ports here. So there's enough connectivity for your smartphone and for charging your tablet, smartphone, laptops, whatever else you need. What I also want to do, since it's such a large car, it's vital to experience the rear seat of the City. So I'm going to sit in it and figure out whether I like the rear seat and the space as much as I do the front. One more factor I really like about the Honda City is that it feels really well built. All the surfaces you touch in this dual tone interior that they offer now are very well finished. The plastics, the leather surfaces, the way the doors close, it feels like a quality item, and I think it will be class competitive, if not class leading. I can't say class leading right now because I'll have to check whether its competitors are close or not close enough to the Honda City. Also, we don't know what the pricing of the Honda is going to be like, so that's something we'll have to discuss at a later date. What I do like, again, because it's such a large car, they've increased the rear legroom by about 100 millimeters. You can see that I have more than enough space, and this is easily the largest car in its class. But there is one catch. In the sloping roof design of the car, they've taken out the headroom. So if you're 6 foot or above, you're going to have a problem here. On the flip side, the seat is very comfortable, offers great under-thigh support, and if you're somebody who's chauffeured around and likes to work on his laptop or read a publication, a newspaper or a magazine perhaps, the Honda City is a really nice place to spend time in, especially if you're under 6 feet tall. I still distinctly remember back in 2001 and between 2003 when I bought my VTEC, there were 3 main features that really attracted me to the car. Yes, it was a City. Yes, it was a good looking design. In fact, I still think that car still looks absolutely fantastic if maintained well. But the 3 main highlights for me which made me ultimately buy the car were: one, that 1.5 litre VTEC engine. It was one of the first VTEC cars in India, and I'll come back to that. 2 was a really quick shifting 5-speed manual transmission that I had great fun shifting around. And 3 was just unbelievable amounts of steering feel the car had. So those were the 3 things that really attracted me to the car. Now coming to the engine, what attracted me there was that it was among the most powerful engines in its segment at that point in time. 1.5 litres, 106 bhp, 7,200 rpm redline. The VTEC used to kick in at around 4,200 or so, and it used to be a screamer. It was an absolute delight to drive. The refinement, the power delivery, it was something else. Now with the 5th generation City, the Honda's also introduced a new 1.5 litre engine. Coincidence? I think not. And it's unique because they've updated the engine. It now has a double overhead camshaft. It has variable valve timing control. It does put out a similar amount of horsepower to the previous engine. It's 119 bhp, 145 Nm of torque. But what I really like is, 1, the refinement. 2, it makes a great sound when you're revving it. And I have to say, the last thing that I really like is you have to hear it go and see how quickly it revs, how cleanly it delivers power. It's butter smooth, it's fast, and it makes driving this car great fun. I mean, you can do silly 3-digit speeds all day long in this car, and this engine just makes it so easy. Now, you would say 119 bhp, that's not a lot of power in today's world, in today's cars, where with turbocharging 140, 60, 80, 200 bhp is quite easy to get. But I think the difference here is that Honda especially worked on stiffening the City's platform, but at the same time not increasing the weight. In fact, they've reduced the weight by a few kilos, not much, but at 1153 kilos, I think that's the exact figure, the City in petrol form is pretty light for a car that's almost 4.6 meters long. It also has lots of safety gear, like it has 6 airbags, stiffened structure, lots of sound deadening to sort of improve the refinement. But even then, this engine with the 119 bhp just flies. I mean, it's a delight to rev. It's really responsive. And I also love the 6-speed manual transmission. This is new. The earlier City petrol used to come with the 5-speed. This 6-speed shifts really well. It's fast, it's well defined, and you can really slam it around. So I'm getting 2 of those feels of my VTEC back. This really responsive engine that you can take to almost 7,000 RPM. It delivers its peak power at 6,600 RPM, and a really quick shifting gearbox that's a delight to use. Steering also has quite a bit of feel. It's a big improvement on previous Cities, but there also seems to be some artificial bit of weight. And I think where the ride is concerned, Honda has not tried to make the City very sporty. They've still kept a bit of the comfort factor. Now, what does that do? Yes, it rides quite well. Yes, it handles bad roads well. But when you're throwing it around, you're taking curves at high speed, you can feel the body roll. But even at high speeds, it's very stable. So that is not a problem at all. Another aspect of the City that Honda engineers have really worked on is with regards to the visibility from inside the car. Previous Cities, you could say a couple of them had really big A-pillars, which when turning used to be a big hindrance for drivers. You could easily miss a two-wheeler or a car inside that blind spot. So on this platform, the 5th gen, they work specifically. You can see the A-pillars have moved. In fact, the rear view mirrors, the side rear view mirrors have been moved from the install here onto the door to give more visibility, and I have to say it works really well. The A-pillar blind spot is largely gone. The windscreen is quite large, and you look out pretty well. The rear view still remains a bit of a small windscreen for me, but overall it's a cabin that you really enjoy looking out of. It's easy, the shoulder line is low, and with the added sort of sunlight coming in, especially with the sunroof here, it also makes the cabin airy, which with its black and beige combo is quite apparent, and in any case it's a pretty big cabin. So I think that gives the cabin a pretty good feel. Now what I also want to do is, we are driving 2 versions of the City today. The brand new 1.5 DOHC VCT engine, which I've just described. It's a delight. I love the engine, I love the gearbox, I love how it drives. It takes me back to my own VTEC. It sort of gives me that fun, and at high revs the engine makes a really nice noise, so that adds to the driving appeal. The next one I'm going to drive is going to be more for the economy conscious, for people who drive a lot more. It's the 1.5 diesel with the 6-speed manual. There's also a 1.5 petrol with a brand new CVT gearbox, but we're not driving that today. We're going to test that on a separate day. For now, it's the diesel. Now, the 1.5 litre diesel at the Honda range is something we are quite familiar with. It was available in the last City, it's available in the current Amaze, and we know the pluses and minuses of the engine. It is not the most refined of the range. It has a pretty aggressive power delivery, but I'm quite happy to say that Honda engineers have worked on both aspects, and this is the most refined version of the 1.5 litre engine that I've seen in Honda products. At high revs, it's still a little too loud inside the cabin for me, but I think they've done a major improvement, and if you have the stereo turned up a bit, that shouldn't be much of an issue. The vibrations have especially been cut out, especially in the gear lever from the steering. The earlier versions of the engine were quite bad with that. So that's a good part. And the other thing that the engineers have worked on is the power delivery. Earlier, when the turbo kicked in at 2000 RPM, it was really aggressive, and the engine would really play between 2000 and 4000. And below 2000, it was a really difficult engine to work with. But that has been largely sorted out in this version of the City. The engine's linear, the turbo kick is not that pronounced, and it still gives you 99 bhp at 200 Nm. So it's still pretty quick. It responds really well, and I have to say, for a diesel, it revs really quickly. So I think that adds for it. Plus, it's quite efficient. I mean, we remember from our previous test getting easily anywhere between 17-18 kilometers to a liter or above on the highway, and I don't think this will change much with the City. This diesel version weighs about 1200 odd kilos. It's about 50 odd kilos more than the petrol version, so you really can't feel it. But like the petrol City, you can also feel the body roll when you're throwing the car around or you're taking it on fast curves. As a result, I would highly recommend the petrol version. The petrol 1.5 manual of the City is something that I would recommend to people, especially if you enjoy driving, and you get many pluses with the City, especially if you look at the 1.5 petrol engine. You get the largest car in its class, you get a lot of room inside the cabin, you get a big over 500 litre boot, you get a car that's efficient, you get an engine and a gearbox that are great fun to drive. The ground clearance is quite good. I think it looks quite good. I quite like like I said earlier, the lights and the headlights and the tail lights, and the equipment levels are pretty high. Like I said, 6 airbags, ABS, EBD, and like the Accord earlier, you also get a sideways camera, so when you're turning, when you turn on the indicator, you can see what's on your side and the blind spot is removed. So all those are pluses, but no car is perfect. Some of the minuses: the camera resolution of the City, the screen resolution of the City, and their brightness still needs a lot more work. That needs to be improved upon. It's got Amazon connectivity, which we'll review in a later video. It's got acres of legroom, but the headroom in the rear is a little short. And the last thing I think I have to say is that even though the engineers claim that they've done a lot of work on sort of improving the refinement, I can still feel quite a bit of the road noise coming inside the cabin. It's a little more pronounced in the diesel because the diesel engine's noise level also adds to that. Now this could be due to the tires, and I wouldn't mind slightly larger tires in the car. 185s on a car that can go this quickly, I think, is a little undersized for me. But that's something, the noise levels inside the car is something that can certainly be improved upon. The last factor is, of course, in the Indian market that you have to consider is pricing. Now that's something we don't know. Even when you see this video on the 30th of June, we will not know what the pricing is. That will be revealed at a later date. And in effect, the pluses of the City: the 1.5 litre petrol engine is magnificent, the transmission is fantastic, it's really good fun to drive. It's a bit soft on the suspension side, but that's great for ride comfort. It's fully loaded, it looks quite good, it's the biggest car in its class. Now whether the pricing justifies that is something that Honda will have to be careful about and will determine the success of the City in the Indian market.